Okay, hello and welcome back to Querying IFS with Alessio and Jude. Hello, Alessio.
Hello, Jude, and hello, everybody who is listening or watching. We are on, where are we on? We are on YouTube.
We're on Spotify, we're on Apple
Podcasts. And also, I think I'm also posting the same links on my website for those ones who want to visit happywithalessio.com.
Yeah. So we are available in a number of places.
Always.
And it's been really lovely that even this early on that we're seeing that people are listening. So thank you so much and watching. So thank you so much for engaging in what we're saying. It really means a lot to both of us. We started this podcast because we wanted this information to be out there in the world. So the fact that you're picking it up and taking it in is brilliant.
Yes, as we say, we're querying this together, not just the two of us, but we hope that anybody who listens or watches kind of gets their juices going in terms of querying. And yeah, you might have very different experiences of what we do, and that's fine as long as it's generating some more curiosity and querying of IFS.
And we know some stuff, hopefully enough to be saying what we think, but we're certainly not saying that there's only one view on any of these things, and the spirit of querying is that we're questioning and being curious.
Yes. And I know we say this in some podcasts, not in some, but maybe for those ones who might be listening to this episode for the first time, just something about the two of us, in terms of career, where we're at. We are both IFS professionals. I'm an IFS trainer. I usually stop at that, but I want to add that I'm also a psychotherapist. And then I am, what's it called? Approved clinical consultant. And more things to come, I hope. What about you, Jude?
So I'm a certified IFS psychotherapist and an approved clinical consultant, and have done some training with you, Alessio, and have presented at the conference a couple of times. And that's all I need to say right now.
Beautiful.
And we're podcasters.
We are. My God, yes, we are. Well, I'm also a blogger. My blog on my website is quite well known.
Yeah, but you're a blogger. I'm not. Yeah, and I think we've both got chapters in books and various things around as well.
We do. But you have a book.
I do. I mean, I'm in an autistic anthology. Yeah,
which is on topic for today's
topic. Today. Yeah.
I have a contribution to a neurodivergent piece, and there is a book chapter that I wrote for the LGBT community to be published. So far, the editors are happy with it.
So depending on when you're listening to this podcast,
it
depends on how many of these chapters exist.
True, exactly. It's just one chapter, but yeah, depending on
when. That is now, but hey, people might be listening in 2026, Alessio, when you've written
for
all
sure,
those other
my blog exists. They can go and check it out.
Yeah.
So, Jude, would you introduce the topic for today?
Certainly. So today we are going to do a little dive into what does neurodivergent affirming practice look like? As in, what does that look like for you as a therapist or practitioner or person who is working with clients who may or may not be neurodivergent in some way, which is a topic very close to my heart. And Alessio.
And the finger of Alessio's gone up. For those ones who are not on YouTube, they will see the finger when...
And Alessio's finger has gone up.
Yeah, this is the way my system reminds me that I've got something to say before I forget it within 4 seconds. Thanks to dyslexia. Because as you said, something about neurodivergent affirming practice in the therapy room, I also want to add in the training room, because part of the gift of becoming a trainer is that I am able to make a difference in training settings, to make them as more affirming and accessible as possible to different forms of neurodivergence.
Yeah. So let's thank your finger, because that's a really important point too.
Yes.
And we might get onto that more generally. That's another thing that's very close to my heart, is actually how many experiences of training within psychotherapy and counselling can be quite traumatic. Can be traumatic for neurodivergent systems. And that's not just within IFS. Certainly not just within IFS. In fact, IFS, I think, does a better job than many other modalities. Maybe we'll get onto that. We'll see how we get on.
Probably there's going to be another whole chapter.
I feel like, there's a soapbox I could get on, but we'll maybe pause.
Again, let's start with the practice.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure we can expand it later on.
Yeah. So I'm going to say what neurodivergent affirming practice means to me, and then maybe Alessio, if there's something you want to add to that, and we'll start from there. So neurodivergent affirming practice is working in a way that allows us to both accommodate and meet our clients where they are, maybe with a variety of different access needs that they have related to their neurodivergence. So that might be about the physical space in which I meet people, but it might also be about the expectations that I have of my clients, and much more. So affirming practice might look like, so for example, having a therapy room which is lit in a way, or takes account of my client's sensory needs around not having too many distractions, or not having any not having lots of loud noises going on. Maybe, it could be something as simple as closing a window, but it might also be about what are my expectations around my clients showing up on time. So there's a lot within it, which we could dive into so many different avenues of, but I just want to see, Alessio, if there's more that you would add there in terms of what is neurodivergent affirming practice to start with.
Yeah, I think I've counted 3 things. I got 3 fingers up. Let's see if by the third one I remember what it is. But starting with the sensory aspect, one could be the smell. There could be chemical products that can be used, especially if it's a shared practice. That might be particularly impactful on some clients. When it comes to online practice, which is what I mainly do, I only see people in person when I do trainings. It's also kind of remembering the level of control that we have over the settings. If we are in person, we have much more control over it and responsibility over it. If we are not, we don't know exactly what's happening on the other end of the screen. It's not under our control yet. I believe it's under our responsibility ethically to inform the client and to get into a discussion as to what can they do on their end to make the session as smooth as possible. In terms of, I wanted to add, in terms of punctuality, that there are various levels in which the more logistical aspect of the practice can be can require more flexibility or more discussions to find out what's going on, which is anything from remembering that there is a session, or the way communication that can happen in between sessions, the use of booking systems, for example, or of other more advanced, or not more advanced, but more modern ways of keeping track of time and commitments and payments. All of these things can, traditionally can be seen as resistances, and the client is somehow communicating something from the unconscious versus, well, this might just be a genuine barrier of some sort.
Exactly. And that's that. Yeah. So I'm glad you're saying that, because it made me realize what I hadn't said about the affirming part of neurodivergent affirming practice is exactly that. It's that we are meeting our clients without making these preconceptions that they are being, lateness is only because of resistance or being a difficult client. I remember that from my psychodynamic days. And that actually our client sensory needs are valid and important, and with what's within our power too, should be taken care of. If a client is going to feel more comfortable with me not making with me talking to me without making eye contact with me, because for them eye contact feels painful, feels physically painful, then I am going to affirm that choice in them, and not see that, not insist that that's something that happens because it's something that I need. I mean, personally, I don't need that anyway, because the eye contact for me can be a very intense and tricky thing to navigate. But it, as an example, what an affirmative practice is saying, okay, that's what you need. That's not a problem.
Yes.
Yeah. You are valid in having that.
Exactly. And as you say that as we, we've named just a few things that we'll probably dig into more. There is also the invisible, unspoken effect that an affirming practice can have, which is the fact that you present yourself, maybe even explicitly naming neurodiversity, neurodivergence from the outset, from the first time someone encounters you. For example, you and I, we both present ourselves when we work in IFS trainings as both neurodivergent, and we name our pronouns. So that's that's the beginning already of an affirming practice, because it gives the message that this is something that we can talk about. This is something that we're not going to shy away from. And the word that comes maybe because of the other podcast on shame is that we are setting up a small system, a system within a larger system. But in our small system, we are giving the message that in this therapeutic system, in this dyad that we're establishing here, there are different social rules in which neurodivergence is included in the dialogue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure you've had this experience that actually the power of naming. Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. For me, my neurodivergence is front and center on my website as well, and on my listings. So when people come to me, they are coming because they want a therapist who is, well, I'm ADHD, which is autistic ADHD. So they want either specifically that, or they want a neurodivergent therapist because they want someone who is going to understand a certain level of what's going on for them without them having to explain it. When being on a training, and in that, the first, when you introduce yourself at the beginning, and I say, hi, I'm Jude, she, they, and I'm ADHD, the amount of small conversations that starts, maybe around the lunch table, if it's an in-person training, or maybe in a little private conversation, because when that is part of the affirming practice, is saying these are my identities, and then other people with similar identities or with curiosity around their identities suddenly start talking to you and
They do
wanting to explore that with you, which I really welcome, and I love.
Yeah, we're undoing part of the shame, because why is it that it takes someone to disclose their neurodiversity before someone comes and speaks to you? It's because generally we're not at the stage where it is an easy and neutral conversation to have with someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say on that note that the choice to publicly share my neurodivergence was not one that didn't require a lot of work with my own parts to do in the first place, because of that fear of, well, what if then you get no clients? What if nobody wants to work with you? And it's been completely the opposite. But just to say, that exists within, me as well.
Yes.
Within all of us. Yeah.
I want to bring another aspect.
The finger's up.
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, of course. It's a conversation.
Thank you. Because you're saying, the fear of coming out somehow and the negative impact. And the other experience that I've had is almost saying, well, if you can hide it, why do you disclose it?
Yeah.
Because if I don't tell people that I'm dyslexic, probably they would not get it. And so I could, in theory, do it, yet I don't see the need to hide it, because I see there is much more benefit in saying it in service of making it okay, making it part of who I am. But that's also part of the societal thing. Either don't say it because there might be bad consequences, or why do you say it? You can hide it. So the message is, well, there's no need to speak about this.
Yeah. So part of how we affirm is also with leading with that openness, leading with that embracing of our various identities. Yeah. Absolutely. And I wonder if it's helped. Just having a thought there. So when we're talking about neurodivergent affirming practice, I mean, neurodivergence is, of course, a very broad umbrella, which I am not going to define, because first of all, it's ever changing, and secondly, I don't feel the need to do that. But under that, within the umbrella of neurodivergence, we certainly have autism, we certainly have ADHD, we certainly have dyslexia, dyspraxia, and much more. Just because I haven't named it doesn't mean it's not there. And so a neurodivergent affirming practice recognizes that there is a broad umbrella of neurodivergence. So I'm not going to say I'm meeting an autistic client. It's something that we talked about before about map and terrain as well, that's coming in here. So, but maybe somebody says on my intake form, I'm autistic and I want to work on, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into that room going, I know exactly what that means. This is what you need. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, great to meet you, human being, and tell me about what that means for you. And I'm going to be curious and I'm going to ask, is there anything around this setup in which we're meeting that could be better for you to allow you to access this therapy more helpfully? And what I would say is, do not underestimate the power of even asking that question, because most clients that we meet will have had many experiences of being misattuned to, or not given the space to have their needs met. it's not uncommon for clients not to have an answer to that question of what do you need immediately, because actually being asked that and being able to actually have that choice is often very new. So that choice might be around, I mean, I mentioned eye contact earlier. I mean, I have clients who need to move around whilst we're working together, and in many other situations they've been told that that's not okay, that they need to sit still. I mean, I talk with my hands all the time. I'm modeling movement all of the time anyway, but we've all had these kind of messages about how we should be in a situation, and neurodivergent clients will, and not exclusively neurodivergent clients, but neurodivergent clients will all have an experience of masking their neurodivergent traits, or attempting to, because back to shame, because society says, no, you must sit down and pay attention, and paying attention looks a certain way. So, and in true neurodivergent fashion, I have actually forgotten where I started this point. So I'm going to pause there and see how it's landing.
Yeah, because you're naming something that I'm gonna use to tease one of the next episodes, which is about the education system and neurodivergence, because of exactly what you said, that we get brainwashed that we can learn and only when we are sat, blah blah blah.
Yes.
And as you named the movement, something that I noticed when we were preparing the Neuroquerying conference that you came over here. Like, I was moving much more than you were. I was always going up and down, and now I'm moving my hands, my feet, I'm moving everything. And how difficult it's been to fit into even the psychotherapy training, where you move something and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you moved your hands. Yes, I have. That's all there is to it. There isn't like some sort of secret kind of meaning behind it. But yeah, as you say, asking that question, even if there is no answer at the beginning, just you're saying, I know that I don't know. I know that we probably don't know either yet what and how this space can be conducive to you. And I'm open to, as we said earlier, to explore the terrain together.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than me telling you how this should be.
Yeah. And I think a point I want to add there is that it's not a one-time question. It's not a one-time invitation. It's something that we revisit over and over again with clients, revisit over and over again with my clients and supervisees over time, not only because needs change, not only because at the beginning of our work, that might be the first time they've ever been asked that question, but also because it's easy to forget that when maybe only this space in your week or whatever is neuroaffirming or has a neuroaffirming agenda. Because I mean, I can't say that it's.
I would call it attitude.
Attitude, better than agenda. Yes. Yeah. So we need reminding that this is okay to do here, and parts need time to trust in that. Yeah. So it's an ongoing invitation. It's a repeated invitation.
Yeah, and I want to go back to that language piece, because agenda, techniques, what to ask. Sometimes the discussion can easily go into that direction, and there might be people who are following this podcast who have parts who would want to have the right question to ask. Yes. When is it okay? And to me, it's all about doing whatever you do as a neuroaffirming practice from self, which sets the tone of an attitude from which these questions emerge. Because there is no right or wrong time to ask that question, as long as the attitude is always there. And therefore, the discussion about making it neuroaffirming can happen at any time, is almost underpinning anything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might be that it is the therapist who needs perhaps to insist at times, in the best interest of the client, that maybe there is a discussion about something, because especially in my perspective, sometimes people can be on a different path in their acceptance and discovery of their neurodiversity. And which is something we spoke about in the conference, but that could be another episode, Jude. But because you tend to have people who come to you, Jude, are much more aware of, maybe that come with self-diagnosis or diagnosis, or
both of which are equally valid.
But they have actively engaged with.
There is, but for my clients, they are already aware of their neurodivergence, whether that is defined or just a thought. There's a level of, this is me, and I like the distinction. You had the kind of the 3 levels that you were talking about with in a presentation at the conference, and that's kind of level 2, I think.
Kind of.
The middle one, and you had
remember.
No,
but
I don't know why I brought numbers into it at all. But that's a different level. To Alessio, where some of your clients.
Well, I think just in a nutshell, now that, as you name it, something's coming back to my mind. Like we can think of 3 levels. Let's put it this way. Maybe they were more like complete lack of awareness of having any form of neurodiversity, consideration of it, or some sort of affirming that this is, and you tend to get, so we call that level 3. Like I know it's here. I'm informed, because to have a self-diagnosis, you've got to inform yourself, or I've chosen to get diagnosed in other ways. I tend to have more level 1s than level 3s, so people who might not be aware. So the way I am creating a neuroaffirming practice is almost by being maybe the only person who, out of care and ethical love, I am finding a way to suggest to the system to consider there is an element of neurodiversity. Because if they're not aware, my question of how can we make this space neuroaffirming, they will go, well, I'm not neurodivergent. Why are you asking this to me? Or what do you mean by that? So it really depends on the clientele that.
That's a really important point. Thank you for making it. Absolutely. And I think another part, I've kind of said this, but I feel like it's so important, I want to repeat it. Sure. Another part of this is not assuming anything about a client, even if they are coming in saying, I am neurodivergent and I know this about myself, not assuming anything about what that means in terms of for example, a sensory profile, or I was thinking more autistic there, not just autistic, of course, I'm not limiting it to that, but for example, a kind of a sensory needs profile, or with ADHD, a particular relationship with time, or with dyslexia, that means something specific about comprehension of reading and writing. Just to hold those, to hold all of it very lightly and meet our clients where they are, with the recognition that where they are is completely valid.
Yes. Where you are is completely valid. Yes.
And that my experience of my neurodivergence does not mean the same thing. If I identify as ADHD, I work with a lot of other ADHD people as clients and supervisees. But yes, there's a common language there, and yes, we might talk about things and find, same for me. But there's also a huge amount of difference.
There is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've got another sliding scale in my mind now, because we can, if you're not self-led somehow, and I believe an aspect of self-led that is not, of being self-led or of self-energy that is not widely discussed, is that I think there is an element of intuition and of adaptability from self-energy, that in a way you know how to tune into someone else's system through self-energy. So you might, the same exact question that feels perfectly okay to ask 90% of the clients, then you might find that 10% it just doesn't feel right, or that you ask and it doesn't land well. It's always about kind of looking for feedback.
Yeah.
Is offering the space, having the attitude of neuroaffirming practice, studying, getting informed, knowing the main aspects of autism, ADHD, and then join into a discussion or a discovery, but without having to wait for someone to tell you exactly what it is. That you bring something to the table from your knowledge that isn't imposing, but it's not kind of completely lacking. And sometimes we can go from, I know nothing, I'm not even going to engage in this discussion, or into, well, I've studied it, to be autistic means that, to be ADHD means such and such. So I'm going to use all this knowledge and turn it into a set of fixed interventions that I'm going to do, because that isn't going to work either.
Exactly.
It's about have the knowledge, have the confidence, and use whatever it's needed.
Yeah.
Create
Absolutely.
establish a relationship, create a safe environment where you can explore this, get things wrong, repair. Sometimes we just need to get it wrong, and we need to go through a repair, and that might be the best healing that happens for both the therapist and the client.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with the best will in the world, ruptures happen, misattunement happens, and it's then what we do with that. And it takes me to Jory Agate's lovely work on rupture and repair. It's like, okay, so then we stay with our curiosity, we stay self-led, or we come back to self. We might have a moment of not feeling so self-led, but we come back to that, and we go from that place, and we are open to understanding.
Yes.
Yeah. I had I should have used the finger technique, because there was something I was going to say that has slipped my mind now. But I suppose in essence what we're talking about really is that combination of having some information, having some understanding of neurodivergence in all its forms, and understanding how, so specifically with IFS, there are some questions that can be difficult for some systems. So for example, if I'm working with a client who has difficulty accessing their feelings, or maybe they've been shamed for that as well, bring in shame again, in the past, then that question of how do you feel towards this part might bring up more parts that want to get it right or just don't know. So there's something that's really important, which is about adaptability. So if you're working with a client for whom how do you feel towards doesn't work, then are you okay to be adaptable with that, and ask something else, like how near or far is that part in relation to you now, or how open does your heart feel, or something else. So it's I guess it's similar to what you were just saying, Alessio, about we have not having this kind of list that we're stuck to, but again with IFS, not being stuck, not being wedded to, well, I've learned it in this way, these are the questions, this is what we're doing, and if that's not working, then the therapy's not working. But to go, okay, maybe there's something around language here, maybe there's something around these questions, maybe there's something around this process of closing your eyes and going inside that doesn't work for you. So that doesn't mean we throw everything out. It means how can we adapt and meet our individual clients where they are.
Yeah, I think the terminology is interoception, how we perceive our system from the inside out. And even what comes to mind is the blending and blending. There is a lot of parts that might have this idea that you've got to unblend. And that might be, it's one of the hardest things to do. And a neurodivergent system might unblend in a very different way than another system.
Yeah. And we'll talk about self more another time, but also that sense of, what am I trying to say? Yeah, I have this experience a lot with clients who come for IFS because they've read a lot about IFS, and then they have an idea of what their internal system should look like that which words. My system should look like what I've read in the book. And then when it doesn't, or it doesn't quite feel like that, there's this sense of like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. So something else with affirming practice is, what does your internal world look like? What is your experience of being more in self? Fingers up. But we'll come on more to that another time. But yeah.
And I don't want you to stop, but just it's there. But continue. We need to say.
I don't know if there was anything else I was going to say. Other than, so we're just we're just respecting and meeting our clients in their individual experience and not getting too tied up in, our system or their system or both systems together saying, well, no, but this is what IFS looks like.
Yes. And it's time for the finger, because this is bringing me to a point that I think I want to make clear with bringing up also another aspect of my neurodivergence, which is being hypermobile and sometimes called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Because for instance, today is one of those days where my joints are particularly painful, and it's something I don't really share much, but I think this is the right place to do it.
I think so.
And because it links with a very important clinical example, something that, for example, I didn't receive, and it's becoming a huge aspect of my practice as I'm querying IFS, as I'm doing this work with you. And just to be clear with everybody, I don't think this ever ends in a way. The more I discover, the more I don't know and I want to find out, but then I don't want to be kind of convinced that what I've read is just the new way of doing things. So just always acquiring knowledge, but then remaining true to what rings true, what feels important to share with the clients. And I think one of the most important pieces that I hope anybody who's following this can start appreciating is that, when we talk about this in many different ways in different episodes, neurodivergence is not a part of what is this, what is that. But what's important is to be aware that there could be a distinction between, let's say, my joint pain that I have today in the past, before knowing that this could be just an element of my neurodivergence. I would have gone full on trying to find the psychosomatic reason for it. And I might have found it. I might have gone into the shoulder, checking what parts there are. But if it isn't a part, all I will find are parts that are trying to manage it. They're trying maybe to move in a certain way, or just planning maybe not to do certain things. Maybe a bit ashamed that someone that looks quite strong maybe cannot lift luggage, for example, or will do it, but with some damage. So to hold that, not a doubt, but that possibility that in this case, it could be a joint pain that can be confused for muscle pain, or in case of autism, there could be like a headache, just to offer the option that, oh, maybe it's a hyper exposure to sensory stuff. To offer that would, or to offer to me that I maybe go to my therapist and I'm like, oh yeah, my shoulder is hurting. And maybe the week before I did a lot of work on a shoulder that was holding trauma, just to be able to say, but I think it's my joint. I can feel my system almost never received that in a way from my therapists. But how important it can be and how affirming it can be to say, let's look into this, because maybe this isn't a psychological issue. Maybe this isn't a strategy used by your managers. Maybe this isn't a trauma or a burden held by your exiles or other parts. Maybe it is.
So it's something about holding the possibilities, and absolutely. And I think for years I was very confused for myself around kind of social anxiety, and why is it that I can sometimes be okay in these situations and sometimes not. And then through understanding my neurodivergence, I'm like, okay, in a social situation, there is so much going on for me that it is exhausting. So now I can make the choices of, do I want to do that? And this is a real quick thing on this, because I know we're going to come back to it. But it's like, rather than pathologizing myself and not quite understanding and thinking, oh, this is this issue that I have done so much therapy around, and yet it's still there. I can recognize I have whether I have a smaller social battery, or whether actually because of the amount of information I'm receiving in a social situation is so much, for whatever reason, I get worn out more quickly. And if I can just give myself permission to recognize when I'm at the edge of that, and actually I just need to go, then that's usually fine. But when I was kind of going into that situation thinking, I just need to stay here, I just need to stay here, I just need to stay here, because that's how I'm going to manage my anxiety by having the exposure therapy, essentially, I would become completely dysregulated and then be in this cycle of eternal failure, or overusing alcohol, or whatever else to be able to do that. Whereas now, with the information, I can feel the edge of, I've had enough of this, and mostly these days, without too much shame, but hey, it's still there. Be able to say, well, be able to make the choice. Maybe, do I want to go into this situation or not? But then also in the situation to go, oh, that's enough. Time for me to go. Yeah, so just a different a different kind. It doesn't have to just be a physical thing. It can also be these symptoms of these disorders. I'm doing so many air quotes right now for anyone who's listening to the podcast, not with the video. Hopefully that's coming across in the audio. So it's like, when we have the appropriate lens, to say, this is a joint, or for me to say, this is my innate capacity in this situation, then we don't even have to get the parts involved so much.
Because bottom line, we want to hold the possibility that what we have pathologized, as you said earlier, as a psychological dysregulation or lack of adaptation, might be none of it. Like I said earlier, it is the room that's too hot, we're gonna open the window. It isn't me over sweating out of anything. It's like it's a perfectly, normal, in inverted commas, or functional response for that system to be overwhelmed in social situations. That is going to be respected and the life built around it, rather than trying to challenge it as a psychological burdened response. Because it isn't. Because it isn't a part. Because it isn't a burden. And so on.
Right. Because it's part of the system. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know how long we've been talking, Alessio. I don't know if you have a sense.
I think we're coming pretty close to the maximum time we want to spend on one episode, even to just give space to our followers and listeners.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll come back to this topic again and everything else, because it's such a rich bed. I'm just checking whether there's anything else that felt really important for me to say. The only other thing I think to say on neurodivergent affirming practice is recognizing that that's not just what's going on with our clients in the room, but might also be about how they come to meet us, whether they have to travel to get there and what that experience might be like, or whether they are seeing us online and what's going on around that. So I don't need to say a lot on it other than like I was saying earlier with this might be the first time a client's been asked, how can this space be more comfortable for you in whatever way. It might also be the first time that they've considered what the impact of these other things is. So whether that, what's the impact of the journey to come and meet me? I only work online, or what's happening around sessions. So I just wanted to name that just lightly. That's all. I think that's all I felt I needed to say.
And there is a lot more. I think I didn't realize how much I wanted to say about this topic. So I'm glad that we have recorded this. I'm sure there'll be more, and I want to involve whoever is listening or watching this to kind of, as usual, really, we are open to feedback.
Yes.
To let us know whether anything that we said maybe didn't really.
We want to hear about what didn't land as well. Yeah.
Or maybe something that we missed, or if you want more on specific aspects. If one of you has the courage to tell us, maybe it will help a lot of people who think that we may be too busy to even listen. But actually, we care a lot about this project.
Definitely, absolutely. And how can people get in touch with you, Alessio?
Before we go there, I've got two things, because there's two hidden fingers that I didn't show you.
For the listener and for the viewer, those fingers were not present on the screen, so.
True. The fingers might have their own podcast at some point. The Secret Life of Alessio's Fingers, the podcast. Or even the musical. Okay, maybe we need to erase this. Anyway. So, no,
I think we'll keep it in.
Okay, fine. But I think there's two questions that I would invite people to ponder about.
Right.
One, you can see that there is a teacher part in me that wants to give homework without calling them homework. So don't call them homework. Just things to ponder about.
Things to ponder. Everybody get your pondering sheets out.
Yes. So one is, like, how would any space, therapy space or any space that you go to, be more conducive and respectful of your diversity and divergence? And if you're a therapist, start thinking, if you haven't done so already, at all the aspects of your practice that might need consideration. And if you want more content on this, let us know, and I'm going to tell you how. So you can contact me on my website, www.therapywithalessio.com, where you will find contact form to contact me, also quite an extensive blog on IFS, resources on Querying IFS, which is something that Jude and I created some time ago. Also, all these video links are posted on my website, and up to you, Jude, to tell us about how to contact you and where podcasts, the audio-only podcasts, can be found.
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me through my website, which is anchoredinself.co.uk. I constantly forget to say I also have an Instagram, which I believe is anchored in self psychotherapy as well. And our podcast is available through Spotify or Apple Podcasts and on Alessio's YouTube channel. And yes, you can get in touch with us through any of these different streams. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, and I don't know what it was, as usual. So I'm sure it'll come back in the future.
It will come back.
Yeah, just thank you again for everybody listening, and we hope, as always, our efforts and our aims with this is not to be right or to give you any kind of definitive answers, because that's not how queering works. But we hope that this has been certainly food for thought for you, and we really do welcome any kind of communication, any thoughts that you have around this that you'd like to share with us. We're really open to. I've loved the little conversations that I've had popping up here and there. Yeah.
Beautiful. So,
fantastic.
should we wave goodbye to everybody?
We'll say goodbye for now and see you next time.
Bye-bye.